What's going on, guys? Welcome to the Rise Up Rich podcast. I'm your host, David Hawes. I'm here in the studio alone today. But I think today's podcast will really help anyone that's suffering from any addiction, whatever that addiction may be. It doesn't have to be drugs or alcohol. It could be food. It could be shopping. Whatever it is, I've pretty much found that most people have some form of addiction, whether it's addiction to gossip or addiction to overthinking, you could call it. So whatever your addiction is, I think that this podcast will help you. For me, this is like a kind of a special kind of milestone because just recently, on September 5th, I crossed 10 years of sobriety where I quit drinking 10 years ago. Well, drinking, drugs, any form of anything that's going to alter the mind, I can basically completely gave up 10 years ago. And I did a short little video that I released on my Facebook page, my Instagram, but this podcast is going to be the extended version of kind of that journey and how I came to the realization that it was time to quit, and how I quit, and what changed in the last 10 years. Because when you hit milestones like 10 years, a decade, it kind of forces yourself to take a look back. And that's what I'm going to do here with you today. So if you're interested in how to overcome any addiction, if you're interested in the power that will come from making a major change in your life, then this is a podcast for you. So let me just dig right into it and how it all started. So I wasn't really a big drinker ever, really. I was kind of like a late starter to drinking, I guess you could say. Probably didn't have my first drink until I was like 17, almost 18 years old. But as soon as I started drinking, it allowed myself to kind of like come out of my shell. Alcohol was the tool that, let me break down my walls. And obviously I was completely unaware of this at the time, but it was allowing me to be myself again. And because of that, it was extremely addictive. And Hawkins talks a lot about the fact that drugs and alcohol aren't really that addictive. It's about the way they make us feel that we get addicted to. If you do any detox, most drugs and alcohol will be out of your system in about 48 hours. After that, it's just the emotional connection that you have to it. So you can overcome the physical addiction really easily. It's the emotional attachments that you have to the feeling that is what takes so much time usually to come to the realizations, to learn how to become free of that addiction forever. And that's where I'm at today. Like I have zero desire or cravings for alcohol ever. Maybe once a year I'll pass by a beer and be like, oh, it'd be nice to have a beer. And then that's literally the extent of it. So there is no more draw for me. So after alcohol kind of became this bigger part of my life, I was kind of like just consumed by it. It became everything about my whole entire life. I got a job in a bar, which kind of furthered my drinking, where I was then introduced to a lot of other people that were doing a lot of drinking, and kind of took my drinking to the next level. I bought my own bar, and things got escalated even more from there. And then I had business partners who also own bars, and from that point forward, now I had people that we had the same schedule, and we were doing a lot of partying, and basically what was happening is this: I was just kept on pushing the limits of what I was doing when it came to drinking. Like every night, I had to do something a little bit different than the night before, and I just started pushing that envelope. And because I was doing that, people started to take notice that that alcohol might be an issue for me. And I had some friends, and I really dismissed a lot of them. I would get very defensive about people calling me out on drinking too much. And this is kind of like the first sign. If you're defensive about something, it's probably because someone has told you the truth. And so just watch that defensiveness, because if I would have been able to cue into that earlier, I might have been able to make a change. So anyways, during this time, my business partner at the Treehouse, Andrew, he could basically tell that I was in a place where I was ready to make a change. And we started with food, and I was kind of like the basis of a documentary that he created that's called Voyage to Betterment. I think you can view that video on his website, healerman.com. And I was kind of like the guinea pig in the beginning. And so he put me on this diet 30 days. It was basically a vegan diet, but I was allowed to have animal products twice a week if I wanted to. But I basically went pretty hardcore vegan. And then one of the things was that I could only have 2 alcoholic drinks a week for the month. And so I committed to it and I did it. And the transformation was crazy. I lost like 25 pounds in a month. Like my mental clarity improved and all around everything was just changing. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is what can happen in a month. What else can happen? So during that time, he had also introduced me to some healers, and I was getting all kinds of treatments. Had a personal trainer. I was doing all this stuff. And so one of the people that he introduced to me was this woman that's local here in Windsor. Her name's Paula Favreau, and she's an amazing, I guess you could call her healer. I'm sure she probably wouldn't label herself as that, but she does BOSS treatments, which I can't remember what that acronym stands for. Something biomechanical something. I can't remember. But anyways, whatever it is, she's probably going to be like, Jesus. But anyway, so her ability was pretty wild. Like she could just, I could lay on her table and she could pinpoint things that were going on with me. So after seeing her, and getting more comfortable with her, I eventually one day asked her, so what do you think's going on with my drinking? Do you think it's a problem? And so does her thing where you're just laying on the table. She's waving your hands over you. And she says, I think it's related to self-doubt. And at the moment I was like, I had no clue what she meant. And in my eyes, which this is the crazy part, in my eyes, I had no self-doubt. I was confident. And that's what was on the surface at the conscious level. I was confident. I felt there was nothing that I couldn't do. So I really had no clue what she meant by self-doubt. So this was in 2005. And then slowly over the course of the next 3 or 4 years, I started kind of painting the picture of what that self-doubt was all about. So I started playing around with this concept that we have here in Windsor. It's called, maybe it's all over the place, but it's called Dry-January, where basically you don't drink any alcohol for the month of January. And in that month, I would get more done in like my entire year normally when I was drinking alcohol. And then I was like, okay, maybe there's something to this. And it had been my lifelong ambition to become a multi-millionaire. So I was like, I wanted to be a millionaire. My goal actually was $1 million of liquid cash, right? Like that's what I wanted to see, $1 million in my investment accounts or in my bank account. And once I started realizing that I could get so much done without alcohol, I then started making the association that alcohol was a block to me experiencing the level of success that I've always dreamed about. And this was in like the hustle, grind, sacrifice mindset. So that was another part of the story. And the final part of the story was I met this guy. His name's Ronnie Carl. Great guy, into MMA, into like jiu-jitsu, stuff that I was really interested in. And we went out with him one night, and he's like this really personable guy. Girls liked him, guys liked him, and he didn't drink alcohol. And I was like, whoa, what the heck? And after having a few conversations with him, I basically was able to come to the realization that it's like, oh, this is what I am scared about. This is the self-doubt that Paula was talking about years ago. It was like, I was scared that if I quit drinking alcohol, I wasn't going to be the cool guy anymore, right? And like, I still hadn't made all the connections, and they came later, but I wasn't going to be like the life of the party, because that's what alcohol allowed me to be. And the crazy part is like the life of the party is who I truly am, but I could only be that with alcohol. So once I made that final piece of the puzzle, and I always describe it as putting together a light bright. It's like you're building this picture of the light bright. You're building the story. You're putting together all the pieces. And then finally, at one moment, the picture is complete and you turn the light on, you can see everything. So that's basically was the moment. So I had Andrew, I had Paula, I had friends, family, I had all these people starting to pinpoint some things, and I'm building this picture. I had Dry-January, and then finally I met this guy, Ronnie, and then boom, I turned on the light and I was like, oh, I can see it all now. So the crazy part about this journey is I believe that I still quit. I wasn't really totally aware of all of this. I really quit drinking alcohol as a sacrifice to become successful. So this was the mindset that I was still in. I was in this mindset that in order to be successful, you need to grind, work hard, and sacrifice. And my mentality was, I am going to sacrifice all of the fun I was having, because I was having a lot of fun. I was going to sacrifice all of the fun I was having in order to finally reach my goal. I said, this has been my goal my entire life. I was 32 years old at the time, and I'm like, this is my time to do it. Like, if I don't do it now, I'm never going to do it. So I'm going to sacrifice the next 5-10 years of partying with my friends, and I am going to go out and become a millionaire. And so when I made that decision, and what I basically did was I set a date, September 5th. That was going to be the day that I stopped drinking, and I basically partied like a rock star for like 2.5 weeks leading up to that. It was a great 2 weeks. I had a ton of fun. But on September 5th, that was it. I closed the door to alcohol, drugs, anything along those lines. So once I did it, this is when the spiritual growth really started happening, after I finally made the decision, and I finally started making realizations that were completely, I wasn't able to become aware of them because I was so far removed from that connection, I guess. It's about like being in the field. And when I was in the field of drinking, all I could see was drinking. And I literally, this is one of the beliefs that I had. I thought, if I just quit drinking alcohol, I'm going to be so far ahead of everybody else. And then once I quit drinking alcohol, I just came to this realization that I was on the same playing field as everybody else now. Like, alcohol was keeping me like on, in the minors. And then finally, when I quit drinking alcohol, I was just in like on the average playing field of all the pros. And I was like, oh, well, now I need to learn how to step my game up even more. So that was the first realization, that alcohol was just leveling the playing field, but I couldn't see that when I was in the mode of drinking. I also like used to look at people that didn't drink like they were like an alien. I was like, you don't drink? Like, I don't understand that. I'd explain how you don't drink to me. It didn't even make any sense. But then once I quit drinking, I slowly started realizing that no one was drinking nearly as much as I was drinking. And I started making friends that didn't drink. I actually, they just started coming into my life. One of my good friends, Len Strahl, he's a sailor. He's like my sailing mentor, I call him. And he quit drinking just one day, just like I did. So these are the things that I was completely blocked to when I was in the field of drinking. And once I got out of that field, these things started to flow into my life. So then I started making more realizations. And this is the thing, if you ever quit any addiction, I think the first couple months are the months where you go, holy shit, like, what was I doing to my life? And I had multiple experiences where I basically was just having like, I don't know what you want to call them, realizations. They were sad, but they were happy at the same time. It was like sadness for like that I had wasted time, and guilt, I guess, that I'd wasted time, but also happiness that I had finally kind of come out of it. So I had some really serious moments where I was like, whoa, like this is going to be a dramatic transformation. It's going to be a lot longer than the process that I thought it was going to be. I thought I was going to quit drinking. I was going to become this rock star, become a millionaire, and that was it. But I was just really scratching the surface. So again, I quit drinking to become a millionaire. And for the first probably 2 years, I was miserable. Like, I was just hating my life because I had this belief that I was sacrificing having fun to become a millionaire. And now I look back at it and I think how stupid that was. Like, just how dumb of an idea it is to sacrifice for 20 years. So let's say even if you're 20 years old and you're going to sacrifice until you're 40 so you can live a good life once you're 40. It's like, wow, like that is so dumb. Like, that whole concept of sacrificing having fun and being happy so that you can be happy one day in the future. When I say that out loud now, I'm just like, wow, I had it so backwards. So this was I think the biggest thing that changed for me was there was a moment in my journey on being sober was where I came to this realization. No, that's not even right. I didn't even come to the realization. I was still in sacrifice mode. And during this time, Andrew, my mentor, he started hosting these weekly meetings at my house. There were like spiritual group meetings where we talked about spiritual principles, and he introduced us to a bunch of concepts. And slowly my life started transforming. And two of the big transformations were integrity, which was basically being honest, stop telling any lies. And the second one was gratitude, was like allowing gratitude to flow into your life. So basically what I started was this daily practice of writing out 10 things I'm grateful for. And I would search for like anything, like I'm grateful that I have running water. I'm grateful that I live in Canada. I'm grateful for my dogs, whatever, my wife. And every day I would just keep doing that. And one day, like gratitude just got turned on in me. And I've talked a lot about this, so I'm not going to go too in depth, but it just got turned on. And I then started just becoming grateful, and I started enjoying my life again. And this is when the big shift happened, because I was sacrificing, grinding, and hustling so that one day in the future, I could become happy, right? That's what money was going to do for me. It was going to allow me to finally be happy. But unconsciously, I was becoming happy through these spiritual growth principles. And once I started feeling the way that I wanted to feel by reaching a goal without yet reaching the goal, something like miraculous happened, is that my life shifted from this place of scarcity to this place of abundance, and the money started to flow into my life. And all of a sudden I was like, oh, I'm doing it all wrong. I had been doing it all wrong. And this is like, I talk a lot about this, is like the old model was achieve a goal and obtain a state of consciousness that you want to obtain. And I have videos releasing about, like, it's not the goal you're after, it's the feeling that you're going to feel once you achieve the goal. And for me, money was going to allow me to be happy. But then I started becoming happy before I got the money. And once that started happening, the money started flowing into my life. And this is when I made this realization. I'm like, oh, I had it all wrong. Become the state you want to become before achieving the goal, and then the goal will just flow into your life. And here is the kicker. It'll flow into your life and it'll be effortless. There will be no more grind. There will be no more hustle. There will be no more sacrifice. You'll already be the way you want to be by achieving the goal. And this was like it. Like after I made this realization, then I just started focusing on states of consciousness that I wanted to elevate to. And that is what introduced me to, the work of Dr. David Hawkins and the scale of consciousness. And this is all stuff that Andrew taught me. And now I had a roadmap. That's essentially what the scale of consciousness is a roadmap from where you are to where you want to go. And now I had a roadmap to where I wanted to go to. But the greatest thing about this whole process is that I'm enjoying every moment of it, right? It doesn't mean that I don't work. Like I'm here recording this podcast on Labor Day on a holiday. It doesn't mean I don't work, but it just means I'm not grinding anymore. I'm not sacrificing. I don't feel like this is a sacrifice. This is something that I want to do, is deliver this message, help people, coach people, speak at events. This is something that I want to do. I'm truly aligned with what it is I want to do. So there is no hustle anymore. There is no grind. There is no sacrifice. I'm not sacrificing, 20 years of my life to obtain a goal. Like it's just silly, right? It's just so, like, it was just so backwards, and I can see that now. So this is the major shift that happened, was this realization that I need to become the state of consciousness. But there's a lot of other things that shifted for me, and I want to talk quickly about that. So when I was in the drinking mode, I was in the complete state of scarcity, meaning I never had enough money. I was overspending. I was living way beyond my means. A lot of this was to give the impression that I had money to people, because that was how I was protecting myself from feeling a certain way, like from feeling shame, for example. So a big thing that was revealed to me on this path was that money, the desire for money, was just a mechanism or a survival pattern that I had created to protect myself from ever feeling shame again. And the shame was associated to like kind of growing up in a dingy house and not driving nice cars and a bunch of other things I've talked a lot about. But once I allowed myself to heal from that shame, then I no longer needed to overspend to impress people, right? Because I wasn't fearful of feeling shame anymore, right? And I could see now how fake that was. And I don't know if people saw through it. I'm sure they actually, no, I know they probably saw through it. And now looking back, I'm like, holy cow, this is unbelievable. So once I let go of that, I stopped the overspending, right? Once I came to the realization that it's about giving and not getting, right? I completely transformed my life and my business, because I focus on what could I give to people instead of what could I get from people. all of these realizations happened because I quit alcohol, right? And after I quit alcohol, my mind became clear to connect to these principles. So when I quit drinking, I was $350,000 in debt. I had multiple failing businesses, like pretty much all. I had 3 bars and restaurants at the time. They were all failing. I had failing relationships. I was living in a place of scarcity. I was insanely unhealthy. Like there was moments where I remember like waking up and being like just so hung over that I was like, if I didn't have a drink, I would feel the drink was the only thing that was going to pull me back out of it. And then so once I quit, my life slowly started becoming transforming because I added these spiritual principles and the spiritual path. If I wouldn't have added that, I probably would have went back to drink. I can see that I would have went back to drinking because I was so miserable because I was in this sacrifice mode. And if I didn't reach the goal as quickly as I thought I should, I probably would have fell back and relapsed because it just wasn't coming quick enough. So these spiritual principles allowed me to come to these realizations, which started allowing me to be happy. So the one was it is in giving that we receive. So I just started giving my money away, like literally giving it away. And when I did that, I started receiving 10 times more. And then I introduced that concept into my business and I started receiving 10 times more. And then I went from the mindset of scarcity to the mindset of abundance. I went from the mindset of there is no opportunity in, let's say, my city, to there's opportunity all around me, right? And that's the way I feel now. I always have this saying, and this will probably be something I'll have to transcend one day, is that the only thing that keeps me awake at night is all the opportunities that I have around me, right? So my life completely 100% turned around. So I went from being 350 in debt to failing relationships, all these things, to getting married, having a baby. I'm now completely out of debt. And then one of the things that I realized by getting out of debt was that the goal was just completely anticlimactic. Like I thought that getting out of debt was going to completely transform my life and I was going to feel this certain way, but I felt it the exact same. And with that realization, I then started to have to dig deeper to start pursuing the states of consciousness that reaching a goal was going to allow me to feel. And then the money just started flowing in. Like my restaurant doubled. We've doubled the sales up until the point that I stopped drinking and started making I made the switch from getting to giving. We had increased sales by 30% every year for 7 years straight up until coronavirus, right? So the business is completely transformed, and we're also the oldest bar restaurant downtown Windsor, right? And it was because of this one major transformation, and all of these happened because of the fact that I was able to not only make the realization that alcohol was a problem, but also after that continue to move up the scale of consciousness. If I wouldn't have done that, I wouldn't be sitting here today. So then the money just started flowing in and opportunities started coming. And then the next thing that happened, and this is kind of where I'm going to leave this, the next thing that happened is that I came to the realization that making $1 million wasn't my purpose, which was really hard to overcome because I had been connected to that purpose since I was probably about 10 years old, because that's when I made the association that money was going to help me not feel shame anymore. So from the time I was 10 to the time I was 35, let's say, so 25 years, I had held this belief that my purpose was to become a multi-millionaire. And because of that, it was a very hard thing to let go of, my desire for money. But I now can see with such clarity that desire for money was the one single thing that was actually preventing money from flowing into my life. So as I began to dig into where this desire for money came from, I made the association that it came from shame. And then I allowed myself to feel that shame and be free of it. And then once the desire for money was gone, everything just completely transformed and the money began to flow into my life. And now looking back at 10 years, and this is a 10-year transformation, and I said this in the video, but Tony Robbins has this amazing quote. He says, people overestimate what they can do in a year and underestimate what they can do in a decade, right? So I'm like a gleaming example of how accurate that statement is. So if you look back at me a decade ago, right, you would be like, this guy is a mess, completely drinking way too much, probably 4 or 5 nights a week at the bar, and getting drunk, wasted, being in debt, failing relationships, just from the outside looking in, you would just be like, this guy's a mess, right? And to where I am now, I live in a $600,000 house, and none of this is bragging. I just want to tell you how big the transformation is. Live in a $650,000 house. Let's say, I don't even know the value of it because the Windsor real estate's nuts. $650,000 house, got the pool, got the boat, got the wife, got the kid, got money in the bank, got opportunity all around me. It's now I'm holy cow, this is what it's all about. And this is the abundance that I always wanted to tap into, but I had zero clue how to do it. So in a 10-year window, I went from being at the lowest of the low to being in the top 5% of income earners in North America. So this is what's possible in just that short period of time. So I guess what I'm saying is that if there's any addiction in your life that you feel is a barrier to your potential, then today is the day to really start taking a look. And the one thing that I think really transformed this, and this happened for me after I quit drinking, but if you can answer this question now, it'll really be helpful, is why are you using alcohol, drugs, food, shopping, whatever it is? Why are you using it? For me, the why was that alcohol was allowing me to be my true self. Meaning, as a young kid, I was the life of the party. I was always entertaining people. I loved being around people, loved people. I was just this caring, loving person. And then things started happening to me that slowly started putting me into a shell. And I stayed in that shell until I was 17 years old, and I discovered alcohol. And that's when I came out of my shell. And alcohol allowed me to be my true self again, right? So what my journey has been since that day I quit alcohol was finally realizing how to be myself without the use of anything outside of myself, meaning alcohol, drugs, whatever it was, right? So that has been my journey over the last 10 years. And literally as a milestone to that journey is when I was a kid, I used to go to weddings and I would be I would dance all night long, and then all the adults would be around me because I'd be doing all these stupid moves. They were probably terrible because I'm not a very good dancer, but I'd be doing all these stupid moves on the dance floor, and adults would be cheering for me and everything. And then I never really danced again until I started drinking alcohol. Then I would dance like crazy because I was in this shell. I stopped drinking alcohol, and I finally danced at a wedding just last year when my brother-in-law got married, right? So it took me 10 years to finally break down those barriers of worrying about what people are thinking of me, judgment, all of those things. But this is what this journey has been about, getting reconnected to my true self. And I was able to do that because I was able to answer that question, why I drank alcohol. And it was because I was scared that I wasn't going to be cool if I didn't drink alcohol. And what I was really saying there now, looking back, was that alcohol was allowing me to be my true self. So if you can answer your why to any addiction, that will be the turning point for you. That'll be the light bright, flicking the switch of the light bright for you to finally be free of this addiction for good. So let me leave it at that. I think I beat this to death, but if you're suffering from any addiction, and for me, it wasn't, I didn't use AA, I didn't use any groups or anything along those lines. It was really a spiritual path for me, but I'm not knocking any of those groups, but I just did it a different way. And if you are suffering from addiction in any way and you're interested in getting help, I'm available. You can just hit me up on my Instagram or go to my website. I have a free consultation that I do with people, and I can show you in more detail what I did and the changes exactly that I made that allowed me to be free of an addiction. And I just quit cold turkey. No relapses, no nothing, just done one time. So this is what's available for you as well. And if you want to, you can just hit me up on my Instagram, which is David F. Haas. and or just head to my website, davidhaas.ca, and get in contact with me. So thanks for taking the time to listen. I hope that serves you. And if you're out there and you're suffering, and if you think that your addiction is a problem, that is the first sign that it is. Okay, so something is coming into your consciousness that you believe that maybe alcohol or maybe drugs is a problem for you. That is your first sign that yes, it is, and it's time to do something about it. Thanks for taking the time to listen. And if you haven't already, don't forget to click subscribe, and I'll see you next Wednesday.